And next we have Darren Klinck from Arras Minerals. So Darren is part of a company that have a very exciting copper exploration play in Kazakhstan, another place I went out to, and also blessed with cheap power and very good infrastructure. So Darren, thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us, Justin. Really appreciate SCP hosting this today, and great to be joining you. So we're gonna talk, as Justin said, about Kazakhstan. We're 100% focused in Kazakhstan on large scale copper and copper gold porphyries. The first couple of slides here, as you can see, the obligatory forward-looking statements and technical disclaimer. So Arras has been public for about 3 years, early mover into Kazakhstan. In fact, really the first North American junior to go in, really in the back end of COVID. My business partner, Tim Barry, our CEO and director, he's actually based in Kazakhstan with his family. I'm based in Vancouver, president and director, and you can see the mix of our board of directors, as well as some really important technical advisors around the copper gold porphyry realm for sure. Capital structure, here you can see 119 million shares out. We've worked really hard over the last two and a half years to really try and protect the capital structure through what's been obviously a challenging time for the juniors. I think we've done a pretty good job on that. You can see there's a few warrants that'll be exercised here over the next couple 3 months, and then there'll be no warrants in the capital structure at all, and well financed. So right around $18 million cash in the bank, Canadian. We did a financing here a couple of months ago, which SCP was a part of, at 85 cents. The stock's right in around that level, 85 to 90 cents right now. You can see a market cap of around 100 million Canadian. Teck is a strategic holder, so they hold 9.9% of the company. Sprott just under 10% as well. That's predominantly the group in Carlsbad. And then you can see here in this recent financing we've done, we've now started to see institutional investors come in. So about 13-14% on the register. We've had a really strong support over the last 2 to 3 years as we got into the country and kind of got going. From a variety of family offices, retail, and a handful of institutional investors, and we really appreciate that support through what was a challenging time, I think, for all juniors, and ultimately now it's starting to pay dividends. So our overall thesis 3.5, 4 years ago when we got involved in Kazakhstan, as I said, in the back end of COVID, was really we felt this was a country that would continue to see more and more interest from an exploration perspective, and more interest from the major companies. Not only is it well endowed from a metals and mining perspective, but they went through some major changes really 2018 onwards, not only in the mining space, but more generally across all sort of fiscal and economic reforms. But on the mining side, they made some changes going away from that traditional contract system and adopted a new mining law, which is about 80% based on Western Australia, the 20% actually coming from Canada. And as you can see, when we got involved in the country, Rio Tinto was already there. Fortescue had just come in and picked up a big swath of ground. Groups like RCF, in fact, they just recently here, about 18 months ago, finished commissioning a large-scale gold mine with a Kazakh partner, $500 million build. And groups like Chevron, of course, Kazakhstan, well known for the oil and gas resources in the western part of the country. Chevron, in fact, just over 3 years ago, expanded their operations in the country with a $46 billion investment. And so real large Western investment has come into this country over the last 25 years. And as you can see, since we got involved and quickly established ourselves as the third largest landholder in the country focused on copper, we've continued to see more and more interest from the majors, and of course a big push from the European Union in particular when it comes to things like critical minerals. So Teck, as I said, is a strategic holder in Arras at 9.9%. We also have a strategic alliance with them over a portion of our license package, and I'll talk about that in just a bit. But groups like Barrick have come in and established an office and a geology team. First Quantum, BHP Explore last year. 2 of the 6 cohorts that they funded globally were in Kazakhstan. And more recently, you've seen groups like B2 Gold come in and establish themselves. And of course, Ivanhoe Mines. In fact, about 3 weeks ago, Robert Friedland was in the country, met with President Tokayev, and was interviewed on CNN as well. And so we're seeing more and more interest, and I think really it's on the basis of a great place to operate, very well endowed. And of course, as many might be aware, not only is it well endowed, but it's top 10 in the world of producing, many of the things that we use every day in our everyday world. So top 10, uranium, chromite, titanium, zinc, copper, iron ore, coal, big on the oil side. A lot of refined copper, in fact, comes out here as well, and they're actually increasing the smelting capacity. And you can see those 2 pictures there we've included. Those are 2 large-scale mines right up and around where we're based, about 3 hours from the capital city. The Bozshakol copper mine, owned by Kaz Minerals, producing about 100,000 tons of copper per annum and about 120,000 ounces of gold. And then the Bogatyr coal mine, which is the 5th largest coal mine in the world. Believe it or not, I think, Justin, you had a chance to see that when you were out. And, this started in 1954 and still has a 100-year reserve. So this is literally out the back door of where we're based in Ekkuduk. And it is clearly a mining area in this part of the country. Now, the other thing that is definitely, I think, catching hold and becoming aware is the cost structure. And of course, we know globally today, not only is it hard to find deposits, but it's hard to find deposits that you can make into mines, largely on the basis of the creeping costs up to build them, infrastructure challenges when you're at the top of the Andes, for example, and you've got to put water in, you've got to bring power in. And this was a slide that the Mining Visuals guys in Europe put together last fall. And they looked globally on what does it cost to produce a pound of copper across all the copper producers. So you'll see there the Glencores, the Codelcos, the Rios, the BHPs, the Techs, the Lundins, and putting those assets together. And what does it on average cost to produce a pound of copper? And quite interestingly, some of the lowest cost copper mines in the world today are in Kazakhstan. And not because one would look at them and say these are high grade mines. In fact, these are largely large scale open pit operations. You can see in the case of Bozshakol, which is, again, we're pretty well completely surrounding it with our license package now, 0.33% copper with a gold byproduct credit. So it puts it into that, 0.5% copper equivalent. And all of a sudden you're producing copper on a net cash cost basis for less than $1 a pound. You've got, less than 50 cents a liter diesel when you're filling up the haul trucks. You've got $100 a meter to drill core. 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour power, and a highly skilled workforce, of course, with plenty of universities that are putting out mining engineers and geologists. So it's a big sort of aspect, I think, that is catching on here. Not only is it well endowed, not only do you have a mining law that we all recognize as straightforward, transparent, big support from the government here, because again, this is a mining country. But you've got a cost structure that is probably one of the lowest cost structures. And so your hurdle to find things that actually are mines is much lower than in many other parts of the world. So if we switch now into where we are, there's the map of Kazakhstan, 9th largest country in the world, 20 million people only. And we're up in the northeastern part of the country in what's referred to as the Bozshakol-Chingis magmatic arc. That actually continues on to the east out into Mongolia, and Oyu Tolgoi, for example, is on that belt as well. There's 3 known porphyries in this belt right now, but really an underexplored part of the country, and largely because it's undercover in most of it. And so most of our licenses will have 2, 3, 5 meters up to about 30 meters of cover. You're out in the steppe. It's about 250 meters above sea level, so pretty easy to get around. But really, most of the exploration in this part of the world was done during the Soviet era. So in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and ultimately when the Soviet Union collapsed and Kazakhstan became independent in 1990, there really hasn't been a lot of modern exploration. And so we saw that as an opportunity, came into the country and quickly, spent a lot of time going through all the old Soviet reports, identifying license packages that we thought were prospective, really on the basis of that work. And then quickly, as I said, became the third largest landholder in the country. This map here, you can see there's two different colors. There's the shaded blue areas, and those are licenses that are underneath the Arras Teck Exploration Alliance. I'll talk a little bit about that. We still control 100% equity and everything you see there on the page, but Teck on the blue shaded areas at the end of this year, once they've completed the $5 million spend, we'll have the opportunity to select projects to begin earning equity. And then the clear ones you see are ones that we have 100% control of and are doing the exploration on. So we're going to start now talking about Elemes. This is kind of right in the middle of the land package. You can see there just down the road. It's about 20 clicks from Akkuduk, where we're based. But an office there, and our core and exploration facility is located there as well. And you can actually see these are paved highways. It's a 4-lane paved highway that comes from Astana straight about 3 hours to the east. Great infrastructure in this part of the world. Again, these big, large-scale coal, copper, gold mines. You've got heavy rail. You've got high voltage power, and you've got roads that are crisscrossing throughout. So it's one of the easier places to get around, I think, that I've ever visited with operating mines. So when we look at Elemes, you can see here, this is the Bozshakol target. So this is kind of in the northwestern corner of the license package of the Elemes license, which is just over 500 square kilometers. And we did acquire some historical work that was done here. There was some historical drilling done about 18 years ago or so, and that was in two areas. You can see there on the screen, the Bozshakol North and the Bozshakol East area. We had some skeletonized core that we were able to get a hold of. We reassayed some of that and put out those reassays in January of 2024. And as you can see there, 60, 80, 100 meters of 0.6, 0.7, 0.8% copper equivalent, largely right from surface. And for the most part, most of these holes were 200, 250 meter holes. We followed this up with a significant soils program. The cover here is not as extensive as further north and to the northeast. And what came out of this in the first quarter of last year was, as you can see, a very contiguous and coherent copper and soil anomaly stretching over 9 kilometers. We followed this up. Really, we raised some money last year. We kicked off a phase 1 drill program late last year. And then ultimately those results were put out earlier this year, so early in the first quarter. And so those first 11 holes you can see there, we started down in the southern area, which we refer to as Bozshakol Central. Hole 1 was 261 meters of 0.64% copper equivalent, starting just below surface from 22 meters. We then moved the rigs out and we tested some targets along this eastern flank here. And you can actually see, particularly down at Bozshakol East, hole number 4, it was 90 to 100, 110 meters of about a gram gold equivalent. And largely this is maybe 85 or 90% gold was coming back in the assays here. So more gold dominant. And then the next tranche of results, which tested a number of targets, but you'll see here holes 5 and also 6 in this Bozshakol North area. And hole 5 brought back 547 meters of 0.7% copper equivalent, as you can see, starting from 14 meters depth. So, the thing to take away here is you've got 8 kilometers from north to south. These are obviously, for the most part, step-out holes. The distance between Bozshakol North, hole number 5, and Bozshakol Central, hole number 1 is actually 5 kilometers. And you can see all this area in the center here that hasn't been tested. So we truly are, in treasure hunt mode right now. Looking at this slide here, the other thing that's quite interesting is when we did that soil work and put it out early last year, not only did we identify this copper and soil anomaly at Bozshakol, which is where our focus was last year, but also another copper and soil anomaly about 6 kilometers to the east, the Amandai, and that stretched for actually over 14 kilometers. And our focus last year was largely at Bozshakol. We really didn't do any additional follow-up work there at Amandai. But the plan now with the financing under our belt, we've got, as I said, $18 million. That's enough, finance for us for this year and really all of next year as well. It'll take us into 2027 at those sorts of cost structures. And so here in April, May, we kicked off our our phase 2 program at Elemes, some follow-up ground magnetics. We also did some ground mag at Amandai. We've got some MT gravity surveys at Boreski that are commencing here shortly. We started off with one drill here at Boreski Central. We announced 2 weeks ago we're bringing another drill in now, and that's part of a phase 2 20,000 meter drill program, through this year and next year. And then over at Amandai, we're now going to try and replicate, that early success that we had at Boreski. We've done some initial vector IP. We're doing some follow-up IP now at Amandai, really to try and tease out some targets for an initial 5,000 meter program. So pretty exciting to see, these two big copper and soil anomalies, the drilling that we did last year in that phase 1 at Boreski. All were intersecting, copper, gold porphyry style alteration and mineralization. And ultimately now, as I said, we've got a second drill that's arriving here. And we expect to be testing at Amandai in the second half of the year as well with an initial first pass. Now, if we pivot over to the Arras Teck Strategic Alliance, as I mentioned, when we first got into the country, junior company, and then quite swiftly became the third largest holder of licenses focused on large-scale copper gold porphyries. We also recognized that, that was a big task for a junior, particularly if we wanted to be fairly strategic and really kind of protect the capital structure and the share structure. And so we had a few discussions going, but Teck, to their credit, moved the quickest, and has turned out to be a really good partnership between Teck and Arras. What that partnership looks like is we entered into it in December of 2023, so about 18 months ago, and it was a 2-year partnership. It really covered 2024 and 2025. And through that period, Teck is funding US $5 million of exploration across those areas in the red hatched ovals. We're doing the work. Arras is operating. However, they have seconded 2 porphyry specialists to the team in Kazakhstan. Now, at the end of the $5 million spend, which will be completed later this year, Teck then has an opportunity to select up to 4 projects, and each one of those projects can be a maximum of 120 square kilometers, which, to give you a sense, if you look at the Mesor license in the top sort of left-hand corner of that slide, it's about 450 square kilometers. So it would be about a quarter of that size. They can select up to 4 projects. And on each one of those projects, they have the option to spend up to $47.5 million US on each one of those projects to earn up to 75% interest through various stages over a period of time. Once that kind of part of the process takes place, then all the rest of the license packages will come back to us 100%. And should Teck select a project or 2, then of course they have that option to begin earning equity into those particular license areas. Now, when we look at these 2 license areas here, last year largely we were focused on geophysics. We did a lot of soil work, obviously mapping and sampling. We did some KGK as well, which is a truck-mounted rig that allows you to punch through cover and get into the geology, get a core plug back that you can analyze the lithology and look at the geochem. This year now, we announced in February we've got a suite of targets that have been prioritized. You can see here in what we're referring to as the Bozshakol group, the Bozshakol mine, which I talked to a little bit earlier, the 1 billion tons of 0.3% copper is operating right here. It's a 35-year reserve, and again, one of the lowest cost operating copper mines in the world today. You can see our license package completely surrounds that, and that is part of that Arras Teck Alliance. And so in those areas there, we've got 4 to 5 new porphyry style targets that have been identified and worked up last year and the earlier part of this year. We've done some additional geophysics, and in fact, we do have a drill that's turning there right now as we speak, starting to test and do some initial test work on these targets. And so, the expectation, I think, is that, we've been working with Teck, as I said, and prioritizing targets. Teck is very much, clearly focused on large scale copper. And so, from some of the disclosure we made late last year, where we had a numerous number of targets that were identified both precious metals and base metals sort of focused. Really what's getting drill targeted here now as we speak is the large scale base metals, large scale sort of copper targets. All the precious metals targets really are not a priority for Teck, and so we would expect to see most of those would probably come back to us next year. Additionally, down in the south, the southern package, down in the Akkuduk Bozshakol license package, we, with Teck here about 6 weeks ago, tested this 20 square kilometer lithocap that had been identified. We'd done some work in geophysics and worked up targets and put in initial 3 holes here. So really between the Arras Teck licenses along with our licenses, as I said, in a couple of weeks we'll have 3 drills turning on these targets. And we would expect to start seeing assay results coming back, from the lab as we get into the, July-August period, and then pretty steady news flow as you'd expect with these 3 drills turning as we get into the second half of the year. So really, when you look at Arras, as I said, first North American copper-focused junior to come into the country back into COVID. It was hard to get in. We quickly got in, established our local team. As I said, my partner on this, Tim, relocated with him and his family to Kazakhstan, and then really started to focus on all that historical Soviet work that had been done to identify license packages that we felt we wanted to pick up. We're really by design focused in that northeastern part of the country in Pavlodar. We've just found that, with that sort of focus, we can really kind of leverage our understanding of the belt and move things forward and be very methodical in terms of how we've moved the exploration along. And obviously it's working now with the earlier success that we've had at Elemes and all this target generation we've been able to do across the broader land package with Teck. After getting in and getting the land package picked up, we quickly launched that field program. And then, really last year was a turning point to us. Not only were we, doing substantial work with the Teck-funded generative program, but we're able to raise some capital and start to test at Elemes. And ultimately, earlier this year, we've identified and had some good success from that first phase of drilling and now have multiple large-scale copper targets that are currently being drilled and drill tested and will be here over the next 6 to 7 months. So, Arras, we really believe we're at the right place at the right time. I think if we're being honest, 3 years ago, it was a much tougher sell to talk about Kazakhstan and Kazakhstan as a jurisdiction to operate. I can speak from my experience working throughout Southeast Asia and Latin America, and it's really never been this straightforward. We've had enormous support from the government, from the embassy in Ottawa, and the transparency and clarity on being able to pick up licenses and get your drill permits in 30 to 45 days and then get out and get on it has really been refreshing. We're now seeing, of course, the rest of the world, arriving and getting set up for all the reasons that I talked about earlier. We've really tried to manage risk prudently here. And as I said, protect the share structure. We've had great support from shareholders, and now are in a position where really over the next 18 to 24 months, we're financed for the work that we need to do. Plus, we've got flexibility where we can scale up, as is demonstrated here. Just 2 weeks ago, we've added another drill, and really at these sorts of costs, it's not adding a big amount to the overall budget, and we've got plenty of capital, for the next 24 months, 18 to 24 months, and also being opportunistic. I mean, we're always evaluating new opportunities. We've picked up additional licenses, over the last 18 months, and I suspect after we get through and into next year, we'll probably end up, trimming back some of the license package, given we've given first pass on some of these targets that may not be as interesting, and of course then ultimately keeping our eyes open for further opportunities. So we just like to close on this for those that haven't been to Kazakhstan. I think Justin had a chance to experience it, but that was the first photo I took out of my hotel room when we're still in the back end of COVID. And as a fella told me that probably about, 3-4 years ago, originally born in Russia, raised in Australia, lives in London, is married to nice lady from Kazakhstan building a house there. And he said, if you haven't been to Kazakhstan in the last 5 years, you haven't been to Kazakhstan. And that's the capital city of Astana. As Robert Friedland used to say, I think the national bird there is the crane, because there's so much development and building going on in that city, and has been over the last 3 or 4 years. He used to refer to that, I think, as at Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia with the Oyu Tolgoi development. But we're truly seeing that in Kazakhstan, and of course, a big push from the West, the Europeans. 60% of the foreign direct investment today actually comes out of Europe and North America. So I'll pause there, throw it back to Justin, and maybe we got a couple minutes for questions.
Thanks, Darren. I think I know that that Russian Aussie, or that Aussie Russian, however we want.
Yes, you do know him.
Want to call
Absolutely.
it. All right, thanks. I think we're a bit tight for time, so I'll just ask you one. Maybe could you just summarize, maybe high level for everyone, how many meters are going in and how you kind of split them between Beresky, Almondai, and then some of your other targets and what's going on in the Teck JV? Just maybe
Sure.
give some people a quantum on.
Yeah, so on the Teck Arras Generative Alliance, it's kind of 5,000 to 6,000 meters, which is one on the docket for this year, and we're into that now. Whether or not that gets expanded towards the end of the year, we'll see, but effectively the budget's been struck. So, as we get towards the fourth quarter, we'll have spent that $5 million US over 2024 and 2025. On Beresky, we've kind of laid out a phase 2 program, which we've kind of targeted as 20,000 meters, and that will span, this year and next year. We're not encumbered at all in terms of, working through the winter. It's much like Canada. So while there are, additional challenges when you're dealing with cold and snow, you can easily do that. And we've done that in the past. And then, yes, with the new target Amandai to the east, we're kind of pegging another, 4 to maybe 5,000 meter first pass program, much like we did late last year at Beresky. We're still working on the geophysics right now and teasing out targets. And I suspect, that'll happen in the second half of the year. So there's, when you look at between Beresky, Amandai, the targets that are there, and of course there's multiple targets on both those licenses, along with the Arras Teck Generative Alliance, we're probably, 8 to 10 porphyry targets that are all getting drill tested, many of which have seen, no drilling ever here over the next 6 to 8 months. So very exciting, and a new frontier for sure.
Absolutely. And interesting fact from site that I thought was relevant was it's a big crypto mining center in Ekibastuz as well, thanks to the cheap cold power.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Cheap power, and then obviously cold climate, though I think the president, Tokayev, has been trimming back a little bit on that from the perspective that he wants power for smelters and mines, for example, because they hire a lot more people.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Although the proceeds, you might be able to hire someone. But anyway.
Yeah. If they stay in country, that's true. But no, it's a very fast growing, I think, diverse economy in oil and gas, metals and mining, agriculture. And as you said, there's some really good tech stories that have come out as well out of Kazakhstan over the last few years.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Darren. Really appreciate you being with us.